This is Tim,
I'm Mulele.
and this is Critiquing Comics. Welcome to Critiquing Comics. This is Tim with Mulele in Tokyo. We're both kind of exhausted this week, I think. I don't know. This whole week I feel like I'm just barely keeping up with things. How are you doing?
Well, you're doing better than I am. I'm not keeping up with things, which is why we're recording about an hour later than we were supposed to.
Yeah. Anyway, well, let's get right to the comic. We're just doing one comic this time for the same reasons that everything else is kind of going haywire. So this is called Tales from the Interface. Everything is done by Emmanuel Filteau, F-I-L-T-E-A-U, Filteau. He lives in Quebec, apparently. And this is actually a web comic, but it's also being sold as a paper book. And he sent us a PDF of the first. Well, it's supposed to be one issue. It's an 83-page PDF. And I actually read the whole thing because I got into it like 30 pages. I'm just going to keep going. Because it's a quick read. Much of it is silent. No dialogue for much of it. And it was just a really interesting thing. Now, how do you actually describe it? You know, a lot of it is sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of psychedelic, maybe, or kind of doesn't, hallucinatory almost. Well, what we find out after the initial sequence, you got this kind of green-skinned guy who's fighting a giant king crab that's actually wearing a crown, and he beats the crab, and then he goes down into this, I don't know, kind of a pit, and there's water he's walking through, and then somehow he ends up in this big box store and buys something, and then he goes back out, and he's back in the kind of adventure mode, and yeah, it just kind of goes on like that. And, well, then there are sort of interludes where we find out that he's talking to this guy who's apparently a salesman for this thing called the interface. And he's, trying out these different sort of fantasy adventures. And, I'm not sure. I think that part 2 is probably going to have some kind of explanation of all this, but it's an interesting read. What did you think?
Yeah, I actually found it quite interesting too. It reminded me of a lot of European comics, just kind of the way the story moves, and also the kind of non-explanatory explanations. Well, I should say that the first bit of the comic, you get nothing. You go in hard and you just are there trying to take in whatever this weirdness is, and then you get to the explanation afterwards, which I thought was kind of interesting, and I quite liked it. It kind of sets up this thing where he keeps going in and out of the interface, exploring different adventures while he's trying to get sold this product. It's like maybe there are demos or short courses where the salesperson's trying to convince him of doing a longer course. Mm-hmm. And so I actually like the drawing style quite a bit. I like the bit with the king crab at the beginning. And it reminds me a little bit of Mobius. It reminds me a little bit of Rand Xerox. I forget the name of the artist, maybe Liberatore. But there are a lot of nods to European comics here, which I quite liked. The big box store, he goes in to buy something called Actually, no, he doesn't buy it. It's the woman in line ahead of him wants to buy something called Chiz, Chizz,
Yeah.
and I'm sorry, it's just a nasty sounding product name. Um, I mean, Cheese Whiz I never quite liked as a product or a product name, but Chiz shortened like that is too close to Jizz.
Yeah, I
So
thought of that too.
yeah, that's just kind of nasty. Um, but it's featured on one of the opening pages or on
Yeah.
the chapter title
Hmm.
page. But and it's a beautiful 3D computer illustration. And it says like Chiz, three Z's and 0%, but of what we don't know. It's just something ultimately very, very disturbing about that. And I kind of feel that sets the tone for what the world actually is rather than being just kind of an offhanded joke. Because the salesperson kind of makes me feel like he's selling something that's not necessarily wholesome.
Mm.
But the guy does go on these fantastic adventures. And so overall, I quite liked the illustration, and I thought the story was interesting, if not totally understandable.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm sure that he knows it's not totally understandable, and that's why I'm thinking maybe it because as he described it, apparently there are only two issues, and it sound. My guess is that at the end there's going to be some kind of reveal about what all this was.
Mm. I found the one about the creature that's trying to mate with other creatures um, really bizarre, but kind of interesting in its own right. Um, there's a certain amount of competence that's obvious on the page with storytelling here. So when it gets real weird, I still kind of have a level of trust. Okay, what is he trying to tell me? I know there's something there. I'm just not seeing it at the moment.
Hmm.
And reading through some of it, I can kind of discern what's happening a little bit better the second time or the third time. It's not hard to read, but you just kind of have to open up yourself to the comic and let it happen, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I am very curious about the second issue. Um, but of these stories, I think there are like three chapters in this. Um, I was not disappointed by any of them. They all kind of hit me on the same level of well drawn, kind of weird, not 100% sure of what it's about, but it was kind of entertaining.
Mm.
Yeah, very, very interesting.
We use that word a lot for this comic.
Well, I mean, I can't point to something definitively and say, man, that's the shit. This guy hit it. But because I'm not exactly sure what he's going for some of the time. But I can look at it and say, man, the guy's talented. He knows what he wants to say. The only down part is I'm not sure what he wants to say. Um, and so that's where I kind of get lost on it. So I can say it's interesting, but I can't say, man, there's some truth about life in this. Maybe there is, but I haven't quite discerned it yet.
Yeah. Well, in his email, he said it's a science fiction fantasy story following in the footsteps of the great masters of psychedelic sci-fi of the '70s. So I mean but I'm sure he's trying to maybe say something with. I mean, it seems kind of random a lot of it as you're reading it, but yeah, maybe there's something deeper in there. I mean, that first story, it's pretty easy to follow, and silent comics can be kind of a challenge.
Yeah.
The writer is kind of writer and artist, and he's both are kind of going into it without a net because if there's no dialogue, you got to tell everything with your pictures, and that's harder than using the dialogue as a crutch. Yeah, the other two stories I found a little harder to follow, but I just kind of went with them.
Right. Well, it looks to me like it would actually fit inside Heavy Metal magazine.
Hmm.
Um, it's full color. It's painted. It's well done, and there's something a little bit sexy and a little bit dangerous about some parts of it, which made me feel, yeah. And it's just weird enough that, especially the bit where the guy lays down in the it looks like some sort of bathtub,
Hmm.
and all these bugs come out and cover his body, and then he just wakes up and goes into another room, turns into another person. So, what the fuck did just happen? But yeah, it's got that sense of bizarreness, that and it's a little bit tongue in cheek about itself as well, which makes me feel that it's it kind of hits that I don't know, that European 1970s comics when I was a kid discovering tits and in Heavy Metal magazine kind of feel to it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of that ilk.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then parts of it are just funny. The big box store, I kind of laughed at that. Like, well, suddenly we're in this very mundane setting after fighting giant crabs.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you get to the end of the adventure and you get to go to the big box store. That's kind of a weird one, but okay.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand the ending of that. I mean, it seems as though he's going into that room, and I don't know if that's really his girlfriend or if it's just part of the fantasy. Because
Well,
then
yeah.
they're you see they don't actually have sex. They showing above their heads this kind of snake person embracing another woman, and like, okay, that's the end of the story.
Yeah. Well, he calls it a two-player game.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, two players game. And I don't know if those are just avatars for the two people who are
Yeah, that could be
play,
it.
or if they I'm not exactly sure. But I mean, once he's back in the real world, the salesperson asks him, "Well, did she like the ring?" Which he bought in the virtual reality.
Yeah, in the big box store.
Yeah. So it's kind of whatever happens in the one kind of affects the other, or at least you can take things from one and place them in the other,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of also weird. The idea of virtual reality is that it takes place in your mind, not in the real world. So taking one to the other is kind of interesting. Um, I'm not sure how much. Well, I guess I'd have to just see what the next issue is, because I mean, there seems to be a lot of bizarre questions that I have. Not like who did it or what's going to happen next, but just like in general, what the fuck? What in the actual fuck? But it's an interesting comic, and so I genuinely want to kind of explore it more. But who knows? Maybe at the end of the second issue, I just have as many questions as I do now. I'm not sure, but I still kind of enjoyed it,
Yeah.
and the coloring is quite beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I should say just one other thing. This comic bucks the trends of current comics as far as I can see them, and it takes a step back in time and does kind of pull from comics of the past. I feel there are things like the color palette that he uses for the comics, for all of these stories. Some of the uh, stylings of the characters, they just don't kind of they're not of this time, and there's something that kind of transcends about that I like.
Hmm.
So, in general, I guess even though I can't really say what it's about, I can say that I like it.
Yeah, that's about how I feel too.
Mm.
I'm just looking at the web comic. I'll link to it, of course. Um, yeah, so it was kind of hard to find the archive. It's way at the bottom of the page. There's a link to the archive. But yeah, he's on a hiatus right now. And basically, what's up here is what's in the PDF that we just read, or what's also available on Comixology and on his site. And there are a couple of pages, extra pages to run during the hiatus, but he hasn't put up anything new since last November.
Mm.
So the second issue doesn't exist yet, apparently.
Okay. Okay. Well, still, I kind of liked it. And I would like to hear more from him. So when you write back to him, tell him, send more.
Yeah, presumably he'll be listening. So yeah, we'd like to see the next issue when it's ready.
Mm.
Okay, so you said you had some announcements.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, I kind of feel that's kind of a short issue because, like, there's really nothing wrong with the comic. It's just like, oh, yeah, it's nice, great, next. Um, but yeah, I had a couple of quick announcements. Number one, launched at the time of this podcast recording. Uh, Iron Circus Comics has put up a Kickstarter for FTL Y'all, Tales from the Age of the $200 Warp Drive. It's
Is that
Kickstarter.
FTL y'all?
FTL, comma Y apostrophe ALL.
Okay.
Yeah, FTL Y'all. And basically, this is an anthology that I took part in. The concept was that if suddenly on the internet appeared plans for a warp drive that anybody could put together for about the cost of $200, what would happen? And I put in a story called Cabbage Island. I really liked the story, the story, the script that I wrote. Actually, I wrote it with my mother. She's co-author and credited in the Kickstarter and in the book itself. I really like the script, even if I do say so myself. The artwork, I'm a little bit less happy with. I didn't have quite as much time. Let me talk it up in a positive way. Yeah, but yeah, it's on the first day. It's already cleared its goal, and so it's going to print. Actually, I don't think it's even been 24 hours. I think it's been like about 10 hours, and it's already cleared.
Wow, they cultivated their followers well.
Yeah, Spike Trotman, who's the owner of the company Iron Circus that puts out this anthology, has said in a previous podcast or another podcast, her own podcast, that she has a solid list of emails, 5,000 strong. And when she starts her Kickstarter, pow, that goes out and shit gets funded quickly. So if you're looking for that next level of how to do Kickstarter, that's it. But yeah, looking at it now, yeah, her goal was $20,000 and she's got 20,312. So it's still got 14 days to go. She's only doing a 15-day Kickstarter as well. But I just want to say
that's all she needs.
Yeah, that it really is all she needs. Anything else would be a waste of time. But yeah, I'm in it. It's a short 22-page comic.
Yeah. So what can you tell us about Cabbage Island? What's it about?
Well, okay. So the plans for this warp drive are on the net, and this woman kind of looking around herself, says, this is kind of a shit planet. I think I want to leave. And she lives with her boyfriend, and her boyfriend's kind of against the whole thing. They kind of debate it back and forth for a bit, and then she decides to actually make a go of it. And it's kind of the journey of her preparing to go and then her actually going, and what she finds when she tries to go wherever she's going. I don't want to spoil it, but
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think if you're looking for some sort of fantastic Han Solo-esque hijinks, it's not that kind of comic. It's much more of a drama, but there's something a little bit fantastical about it, or at least I feel there is. But that's basically the story.
Okay.
Yeah, fantastical science fiction dramas.
Okay.
And one more thing, just kind of a side note. So Yakai, I finished the Kickstarter. I've printed the last pieces of my Kickstarter stuff. The stickers that go with the books have arrived. I'm putting the packages together now, and they'll ship out on Monday. But
okay, which will be a week ago when this podcast comes out. It'll be last Monday. But.
Okay, see, time travel just confuses me unless I have straws. But anyway, while I was in Canada, this woman walked up to my table and said, "Oh, you should apply to this." And she hands me this piece of paper. Says 12th Japan International Manga Award. And I came back from Canada full of disappointment and just kind of bags on the floor and forgot about it. Took it out of my pocket or my suitcase 2 days ago, and realized that the deadline is June 15th, which is actually
a week from today as we're recording.
Yeah, and so I decided to send in Yakai. So Yakai is going to go to the Manga Awards. But who knows if I'll actually win anything. I also sent some previous comics to previous iterations of this. And when I told the person who gave me the flyer that, she said, don't worry about it. They change the judges every year. Just send something each time. And so I said, okay, I can do it. And I'm going to send it off. But basically, looking through the website itself, I couldn't find anything that I was supposed to be winning here. So there's the gold prize, the silver prize, and the bronze prize. I couldn't figure it out, and until my co-author on Yakai, Noriko, she looked at the website in Japanese and said, "Oh, if you win, they give you a grand tour of comic book companies, and you get to meet all the head honchos, and that's the prize." So who knows what will happen with it? But that's my little bit of news. I'll keep you posted, and maybe in a month or two, I'll hear something back.
Okay. Okay, so if you'd like us to critique your comic, send a PDF or a link to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. We'll read at least 30 pages, or if we like it more like we like this one, we'll read more of that. And we'll give you an honest critique here on the show. So, till next time, this is Tim.
I'm Mulele.
Thanks for listening to Critiquing Comics. Follow us on Twitter. Mulele is at Mulele Redux, and I'm at Decon Comics. Next week on Deconstructing Comics, Kumar and I discuss G. Willow Wilson's Ms. Marvel. See you then.